You are standing over a ball. Your weight shifts onto one leg. The other draws back, slow, almost patient, and then it snaps forward. The top of your foot meets the ball, and it is gone. 21 other people chase it across a field. Nobody is hunting. Nobody is building anything. No food is being gathered. For 90 minutes, none of that matters. And the strange thing is that it does not even occur to you to ask why. You have done some version of this your whole life. In a schoolyard. On a beach. In a street with a crushed can standing in for the ball. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. But for almost the entire history of our species, nobody on Earth could afford it. Think about what a game actually costs. You burn thousands of calories chasing something you cannot eat. You risk a twisted ankle, a broken bone, days of not being able to walk. In a world where not being able to walk could kill you. You spend the one resource your ancestors guarded above all others, *energy*, on nothing. On a ball. And yet they did it anyway. Not in one place. Everywhere. In ancient China. In Australia. In the swamps of the Mexican Gulf Coast. On continents that had not exchanged a single word, a single idea, a single traveler in 15,000 years. Separate peoples, sealed off from each other by whole oceans. All arrived at the same odd conclusion. Take a round object. Move it with your body. Make it a contest. Which raises a strange question. Why would a creature built down to the cell to conserve every last calorie invent? Again and again and again in total isolation, the exact same ritual of chasing a ball. Start with something most people never notice. No other animal on Earth does this. A dog fetches. A cat bats a ball of yarn across the floor. A dolphin pushes things through water. Animals play, and they play with objects. But look closely at what you did a moment ago, standing over that ball. You balanced your entire body weight on a single leg. You swung the other leg back like a loaded spring. You struck a moving target with the top of your foot, with enough control to send it exactly where you wanted. And then you did it again at a run without falling. Now picture a chimpanzee trying to do that. Our closest living relative. It shares nearly all of our DNA. And it cannot do it. Not because no one taught it. Because its body is not built for it. Here is what should stop you completely. The things that let you kick a ball are some of the youngest, strangest features in your entire body. In 2004, two scientists, Dennis Bramble at the University of Utah and Daniel Lieberman at Harvard, published a study in the journal Nature that changed how we understand the human body. They were asking why humans look so different from apes below the waist. And one of the features they zeroed in on was the muscle you are sitting on right now. The gluteus maximus. The largest muscle in the human body. They attached electrodes to it and watched what it did. When people walked, the muscle was almost silent. But the moment those people ran, it fired hard with every single stride, bracing the trunk, keeping the upper body from pitching forward. Chimpanzees, Lieberman noted, have tiny rear ends by comparison. That enormous muscle is not for walking. It is for powerful, explosive movement of the leg. The same muscle that drives your foot through a ball. And it does not work alone. Look at the arch of your foot. Apes do not have it. That curved, springy structure running the length of your sole turns your foot into a lever, a stiff platform that can transfer force instead of just gripping a branch. Bramble and Lieberman traced these features, the big glutes, the arched foot, the long legs, the balance, back to a single origin. They emerged together roughly 2 million years ago, in the early members of our own genus. Homo. Sit with that for a moment. The machine that lets you kick a ball is 2 million years old. It was assembled piece by piece for something that had nothing to do with games. Picture a riverbank somewhere in East Africa 2 million years ago. One of your distant ancestors is crossing a stream on wet stones. She lifts one foot, balances her whole weight on the other, holds it, steady, then steps. That balance on a single planted leg. That is not a small thing. It is a feat almost no other large animal can perform with that control. And it is the exact same feat you perform every time you plant your standing foot and swing the other one to strike. You are not doing something new when you kick. You are borrowing a body that was 2 million years in the making and pointing it at a ball. So the hardware was ancient. But hardware is not a game. Someone had to pick up an object and decide that moving it was worth doing for its own sake. And here is where it gets genuinely strange, because they did it in places that could not possibly have copied each other. Go to ancient China first. There was a game called Kuju. The name means, almost literally, kick the ball. Players kept a leather ball, stuffed at first with feathers, in the air and drove it toward a target, using their feet, their chests. Asterisk anything but their hand star. We are not guessing about this. The historian Sima Qian, writing around the year 100 before the Common Era, mentions Kuju in his records of the Grand Historian as something his readers already knew well. It goes back further still, to the Warring States period centuries before that, when it was used to train soldiers. Agility. Balance. Leg strength. By the Han Dynasty, emperors were playing it. By the Song Dynasty 1,000 years ago, there were professional players who made a living from the game. In 2004, football's world governing body formally recognized Kuju as the earliest form of the game for which we have written proof. Now travel to the other side of the planet. To Australia, tens of thousands of years after the ancestors of Aboriginal peoples crossed into that continent and were, for most of that time, entirely cut off from the rest of the human world. And there, among the peoples of what is now Western Victoria, was a game the Jabwarung and Jardwajali played called Marn Grook. It means roughly game ball. The ball was made of possum skin, stuffed firm, and bound tight with the sinew of a kangaroo. And it was kicked. A settler named William Thomas wrote down what he saw around 1841. Up to 50 players aside, sometimes more. The ball sent flying with the foot, players leaping into the air to catch it. That written record is only 2 centuries old, but the game itself is far older. How much older, no one can say because it was never written down. It was simply played generation after generation, long before any European was there to describe it. Stop and hold these two pictures side by side. A Han emperor kicking a feather-stuffed ball in a palace courtyard. A group of Aboriginal men and boys sending a possum-skin ball flying across open ground. These two peoples never met. They could not have met. There was no road, no ship, no letter, no shared ancestor within tens of thousands of years that could have carried the idea from one to the other. And yet both looked at a round object. And both had the same thought. Kick it. Make it a game. Do it together. That is not a coincidence you can explain by culture. Culture spreads through contact, and there was no contact. This came from somewhere deeper. And then there is the physical evidence. Buried in the mud, older than any written word about any of it. In 1987, in the state of Veracruz on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, archaeologists began pulling objects out of a waterlogged bog at a site called El Manati. Among what they found were rubber balls. 14 of them. Solid, round, made from the latex of a local tree, processed into something that could bounce 1,000 years before anyone in Europe knew rubber existed. And when they dated the oldest of those balls, the number came back at roughly 1,600 years before the Common Era. They are the oldest rubber balls ever found anywhere on Earth. But it is where they were found that matters most. This was not a playground. It was a sacred bog, a place of offering. The balls were buried alongside polished jade axes, carved wooden figures, and the bones of infants. Whatever this ball meant to the people who made it, it was not a toy. It was worth placing in the ground, in a holy place, next to the things they held most precious and most solemn. A few centuries later, and not far away, they built something to play on. At a site called Paso de la Armada, archaeologists found the oldest ball court in the Americas, a long earthen alley dated to around 1,400 years before the Common Era. And the game those courts hosted was, at times, a matter of life and death. The rubber balls could weigh as much as 9 pounds, heavy enough to break bones. Some games ended in human sacrifice. This was not recreation as you know it. This was the cosmos acted out with a ball. I have to be honest with you about one thing because it matters. That Mesoamerican game was played mostly with the hips, not the feet. It is not the direct ancestor of the game you kick around on a Sunday. But that is exactly the point. It is not the same game. It is the same impulse wearing a different body. Feet in China. Feet in Australia. Hips in Mexico. 3 separate peoples, and every one of them took a bouncing sphere and built meaning around moving it without their hands. Picture the bog at El Manati one more time. It is dusk. The water is black and still. Someone wades in, holding a rubber ball they made by hand, winding strip after strip of processed latex around a core. And they let it go. And it sinks into the dark. An offering to something they could not see. That ball meant enough to give away to the gods. Sit with that. So bring it all the way back to you, standing over a ball with your weight on one leg. That balance you take for granted, that comes from 2 million years of walking upright on 2 legs. The power in your kick comes from a muscle so large it reshaped the human backside, a muscle that fires when you run and is nearly silent when you walk. The lever in your foot, the arch that snaps the ball forward. Apes do not have it. And the moment you split into teams, the moment the game becomes us against them, you are running an instinct older than any nation, older than farming, older than the wheel. You did not learn to love this game the way you learned math. Nobody had to convince a child in ancient China, or ancient Australia, or ancient Mexico, that a ball was worth chasing. They already knew. The way you already knew. Because the wanting was built in. The body came first, assembled over 2 million years for hunting and crossing rivers and running down prey across open ground. And somewhere along the way, that same body discovered that it could point all of that power, all of that balance and spring and coordination, at something with no purpose at all, except the joy of doing it well together. The ball was never really about the ball. It was about a species that finally had a body capable of play, and could not stop itself from playing. Every match you have ever watched, every goal, every roar of a crowd, is that 2 million-year-old machine doing the one thing it was quietly, secretly built to be able to do. Sit with that for a moment. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, about the strange gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next one.